Welcome back to another episode of The Whole Perspective. My name is Kevin Delory, Chief Lending Officer with EPM. As always, joined by my right-hand man and my brother, Kenny Phillips, Senior Vice President of Lending. Today, we have a very special guest. It's somebody that I've known for a while, and we've had such deep conversations. You know, Alex is a culture guy through and through. He's a storyteller. He's, more importantly, one of the most active listeners I've ever met in my life. Alex has a background in photography. He has traveled the world and, doing documentaries. But talk about culture. He's got to see so many different cultures, and that's something that's pretty impressive. He's actually our first ever in-person interview guest. Yeah.
Really?
This is big news today, right, Kenny?
We had to make some adjustments today.
Yeah.
Seating arrangements, 2 microphones. Generally, it's just me and him, but it's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
some fun.
Normally, it's a table for two. Yeah. We got a third wheel today.
That's it.
But
Happy to be
starting a new trend.
Yeah, Alex, you're going to probably see this guy a lot more. This was our first episode. We have so much to cover. I'm so excited to have you here today. Alex is really the reason that I'm drawn to Alex, he's a culture guy. And sometimes when you talk about culture and I always say, like, people that get it, either get it or they don't, and you don't have to tell them what it is. It's like smelling another alpha dog. And Alex is that guy. He doesn't come across that when you first meet him. The more I've talked to you, the more I realize how deep you are with culture, how deep you are with really being thoughtful with your words. And I think when I was your age, I was never thoughtful with my words. Actually, I was, and they were usually to, get people to submit to me. We're very excited to have you and get into this conversation about culture.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to know that, the whole perspective is really about all different industries. So if you could tell us a little about what you do first, and then we can talk about a little bit how, the interaction between culture and your industry and our industry. It's important. I know you're in oceanography and nautical work, and talk about that for a minute.
Sure. Well, thank you first for having me on. This is an honor. First and foremost, it is an absolute privilege to be here and to be with you. And it's a privilege to have known you for a while, to take on this invitation and to be sitting here with you, Kenny, too. I think, like, when it comes to the work, what I do, starting there, that's a good place to start, because I kind of consider it like, I was reflecting on this the other day. I've actually never been offered a position where I work. I've always had to create a job where I am. Interesting. So I work where I don't belong, basically, because I see an opportunity there in somebody with my perspective being in a certain place. So to go through some of the steps, at the University of Rhode Island, there's a graduate school of oceanography, the Bay campus, where this happens, and it's a premier institution for oceanographic studies. So oceanographic research, climate science, you have some of the brightest minds in the world coming in and out of the doors to understand and deepen our understanding of the ocean, how it affects our life, and how it kind of governs our ability to have a living habitat on this planet. So this story actually begins in 2009, where I was an undergraduate at the University of Rhode Island. I was studying film media studies, really film theory, which basically means I just take too long to do stuff. I just think about it way too long. But I had this mentor, this professor, who was a documentary filmmaker, and she really approached documentaries in a very specific way. She did not concern herself with rushing through stories. She would always talk about, like, find the nuggets, find the pieces that reveal humanity. And you can record those pieces, but in order to do that, as Kevin mentioned, it's a lot of listening. So I worked with this professor for a while, and as this facility was opening up in 2009 at the Bay campus at the University of Rhode Island, at this graduate school of oceanography, there was this facility called the Inner Space Center. It was opening up, and it was going to be this 30-year vision of Dr. Robert Ballard. And some people may recognize that name. He was the person who was associated with being part of the team who discovered the Titanic in the 80s. If you ask him, he'll say, yeah, I know people know me for the Titanic, but 10 years before that, we rewrote textbooks in science by discovering what's called chemosynthesis. So life that lives without sunlight on the bottom of the ocean. Those, like, huge tube worms and things like that. You might have seen those black smokers under the ocean. He was part of a group that discovered that as well. Well, he had this vision that was actually published in a 1987 National Geographic, where he said, I want people to be able to transport their spirit from the shore and connect with people who are out at sea. Because when you have a research vessel out at sea, it's a whole different world. You are enclosed in that floating structure. So he said, how do we get people to make more meaning out of that and connect into it? And this was before we had internet that was available to the public. This was all done through satellite tech. So really, 2009, fast forward to then, at URI, there was this facility being created that was the manifestation of his vision, long-term vision, and it was a mission control. It's a NASA for the ocean, basically. So how I got involved is my professor, who I worked with, made documentaries. She was approached to make one. She brought me with her. I always wanted to do natural history stuff. On the way there, she goes, I'm not taking this gig. But you and a friend of who was with us, she goes, you guys might like this place. So I sat down at the table. She goes, first and foremost, there's a team of people here. She goes, I'm really happy about your work here, but it's not for me. But this is Alex, this is Ayla. They might really get a kick out of this place. The next day, I started to volunteer there, not offered a job. I walked up to the director and said, hey, I think you guys do a lot of interesting stuff, but I heard nobody working on your media. Who's telling the story of your science? All I heard was we're collecting science, science, science. And he goes, well, I can't pay you. I said, okay, I have a different job. I could come in tomorrow. And he goes, sure, go ahead, come in tomorrow. And that was in 2009. I run a team there of media professionals and storytellers. But again, never offered a job, just was like, I see an opportunity here. And that's how it all began.
That's amazing. You know, it's fun. Well, two things. Well, you and Kenny have a lot in common. You both take too long to get anything done.
But even the story.
But I think, you know, what's impressive to me, and this is, I didn't even know we had this in common. It's when I first got into this business, the guy said, you know, I think you'd be good at it. And I said, well, why don't I come and check it out for a while? And I worked for 30 days for free because I wanted to show that I wanted him to determine my worth. But I wanted to make my own, you know, seat at the table. And I think a lot of times everybody's waiting, especially the younger generation, and, you know, everything's done, you know, through tele this, tele that, or conference this, web, blah, blah, blah. You know, they're waiting for the offer instead of going out and creating. And that's what the it person with that it does, right? You go out and you say, look, it's not there today. Let me show you what I can do. And then maybe tomorrow you say, I see why I need this guy. Show your worth. I think a lot of people think they know their worth and they want to be offered that up front instead of showing it, you know, and showing your worth. And I didn't know that about you. And I just, you know, when I was writing it down, the first thing came to my head is how I get started in this business. I said, give me 30 days. I'll join, you know, you'll give me an offer. Sure enough, 30 days. I actually ended up blowing the place out in 8 months and went on to my next gig. But I showed my worth.
Yeah.
I didn't tell them what it was. Right. I think that's the difference.
That's the key. And a lot of people, like you said, looking for opportunity. You got to create the opportunity. If you love it and you have passion about it and you're willing to make sacrifices, you will create your own opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, being on a boat, you know, you said something, you know, you got to be out to sea for X amount of time with people you never met before.
Right.
When we talk about culture, right, a culture usually is something that's built up over time.
Right.
And you have that time to develop. You know, a lot of companies I talk to, they say, well, how do you do it? How do you have the culture? Because when I walk in this door in here, I feel an energy. And I'm like, that wasn't created in one day. I can only exude so much of that. Kenny can only exude so much of that. They got to believe it. They got to, you know, see us be true to the culture, not just be words on the wall. Yeah. How do you develop that when you just all of a sudden, hey, nice to meet you, Alex. We're going to spend the next 30 days on a boat together.
Right. Right.
You know, how do you develop that with the people around you?
To me, it's about everything of your being. Like, you have to wear it on you. You have to feel it. You have to sense it. You have to be part of it, especially when you're on a boat. So me, like, again, going to places I don't belong, like, that has always attracted me. Of like, I don't see there's any room for somebody like myself in this world. I have to, and I've always described it of like, I'm going to go into this unclear rainforest first. And I'll try to clear out some path for us, because the people behind me, that's what it's about, is the people coming up behind me. As we're just talking about, that's not an easy road. It is never, you're the one who's firsting it. And it's not necessarily up to you to first it, but you're clearing some type of path. So I just want to point that out as like, it's not for the faint of heart, but it's also, to put that in perspective, it is for people who can try to approach this, and you have to be in a certain type of position. Not everybody can do it that way. There's a certain amount of privilege that comes with being like, I have the opportunity to move in a certain direction so that people behind me can do it. And to be aware of all that is also very important. Well, you mentioned the ship. So like when we go out on a ship, I am a storyteller holding a camera with scientists who are out to do their science. Running a business, I would imagine there's a certain cost that you need to account for every single day, having the lights on, all that stuff. Running a ship, an average ship is like $35,000 a day to run. Some ships are more like $100,000 a day to run. That's to conduct science out at sea. So these are, when you go out there, if you're the person who wrote the grant to get the team out there, to get multiple teams out there to do some type of research of the deep ocean, mind you, we're talking about cut off from land, thousands and thousands of meters below the ocean. That's the type of work people are doing in this realm. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of pressure. And then you have somebody coming up being like, hey, I'm the camera guy. Would you like to tell me your story? They're like, no, I want to do my science. So the first thing that like everybody gets on a boat, where the culture really starts is it starts from the captain. Like there is a very clear hierarchy on these vessels. The master of the vessel is the one who he calls the all hands meeting. That's where all the scientists, all the students, all the cooks, everybody gets together. And everybody who is sort of like in charge of a department gives a little bit of like, hey, this is who I am. This is what you can expect from me. So when it's my turn, and I'm still like, I got that a little bit today, like those butterflies that come up of like, okay, it's my turn to talk a little bit. I usually like to be in the background. So I have my camera on my body. I have like, you can identify me as somebody who's like, that's part of my, it's like an arm. It's like, this is part of me. This is who I am. And I would just say, hey, for everybody here, I would imagine, and I this was the first thing I ever said. And I was like, oh, it's not too bad. I said, for all of the scientists here, I said, how many of you take your work very seriously? Like you would you're fully committed to your work. And everybody's like, no questions asked. Of course, we're here to do science. And I said, okay, as you can tell, I'm not coming as a scientist, but I feel the same way about my work. And that would immediately level some type of playing field for us to just start. And then I would start to move around and I would see people really from their eyes, how they would operate around me. And I would start to make connections very slowly with people one by one. And then eventually it would be like, hey, when you get a free moment, Kev, like I notice you have more to say than just when you're looking in your notepad or something like that. Do you want to talk a little bit about it? And then you say, yeah, let's sit down. Tell me about your story. And then all of a sudden you just start to learn about these people and a culture starts to, instead of like pressing a culture on a group of people, a culture starts to emerge in that environment and it comes from within. It's sort of this ripple effect that happens. That's how I've seen it done on ships really well. And again, it's like, I used to pinch myself. What am I doing in this environment with these people? I don't belong here. But the only reason I could be there is because I knew how to listen and hold a camera and sort of tell a story with it. And that to me was just like, I'll keep doing that again and again and again.
It's amazing. We do, we have a great cultural advisor, and he goes through this exercise where he calls it the family collaboration. And you're talking about the deepest parts of you to connect with other people, but you have to be willing to do that, right? Yeah. You have to have the right people at the table that are willing to open up, that are willing to talk about and answer tough questions. And you and I have had that conversation. And it's funny. I just realized something when I'm sitting here thinking about our stories and how similar they are. I just realized that you're the youngest of three boys. I don't know why that's never clicked in my head. I was the youngest of four boys. Mm-hmm. How do you think that has evolved, or it really made you the person you are today, of being the youngest in
that's
the family?
Everything. Right. That's everything to me. I reflect on that almost every single day because being the youngest of three, and they were very different. We're all very different, the three of us, but I had opportunity to observe people navigate their own life very, very closely and intimately with them. And we were sort of I was 5 years apart from my oldest. I'm 1.5 from the middle. And then there's me. But I would always notice one was going this direction. And I'd be like, I'll watch that for a little bit. One would go this direction. I'd be like, what's he doing? He would get in trouble. I would say, maybe I'm not going to do that one. And then the other one would have he would do something or something. I'd be like, okay, man, I'll take a piece of that and sort of work that into my own life. So in a way, it was this ability to observe how people are engaging with their own life, but people I really care about, and that they would bring me along with them on certain experiences. And maybe I was too young for certain things, but it would just be an eye opener. It would be like going into a different culture, because I think you want to talk about culture. Like we have the cultures we operate within, but I think we all bring our own to it too. We have our own culture of what's our world. You have an inner world that you are maintaining, keeping. And to be honest, I learned that from my brothers and my father as well, who is another big guy. My mother too. We're a very tight family unit, but what's your inner world look like? And you can see people move and how they navigate their own worlds and be like, that connects to something inside of them very much. And if you can start to develop that lens, and it's like, that's a language that's spoken throughout the world with humans and with animals as well. You can actually see how things navigate their world and how that ties back to something driving them or moving away from something inside of them.
That takes a lot, right, Kenny? I think sometimes people say, I am who I am. I'm my own person, and they want to be that person. They're missing out on so much. Yeah.
Don't get stuck.
There's so many people I watch. I've learned just as much from bad leaders as I have from good leaders.
Good.
And when you say that, one of the things that, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but over your career, you've looked at people like, hey, wow, I've never experienced that, but I could see how that could make me a better leader.
Absolutely.
I could see how that could put me in a better situation. And I think a lot of times, I had that luxury. Same way I grew up with three older brothers, and I could watch them navigate. I'm like, whoa, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. You're gonna get burned if you touch that, right?
Yeah.
And and as I got older, I went through the phase where I know everything. I am me 100%.
I think it's just like you said, it's paying attention, it's listening, right? They become like unintentional mentors, right? When you see people, when you're around people, you extract certain things from certain individuals, good, bad, or indifferent. I think it's important, like you said, being a good listener, being observant, and that's how you build your character, right? What works for you? What feels good to you? What feels bad to you? Those are the things that you change in your leadership roles, right? That guy said something to me. I would never say that to one of the people that's my partners or my teammates, right? So it's really about that observation. It's really about that observation.
Yeah. I think we're we're all very fortunate. I think we've all been through, I think especially Kenny and I, we share a lot of stories. You and I have shared a lot of stories. I think when you could take the adversity and you could really, a lot of people like, whoa, me. Never once have I ever said, whoa, me. My darkest hours, I've never once said, whoa, me. I say, aren't I lucky?
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to learn from this experience?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that people run away from. They were like, oh, poor me. And they don't want to embrace it and really dig into what you were saying. It's like my best conversations are the conversations I have with myself when I'm being honest, when no one else is listening. Just me and Kevin on Kevin. And we're having a conversation, and I'm so honest. I learn more about myself, and I can go home here some days and be like, man, I should have done that. I should have said that. And I come in the next day and I'll call somebody in my office and be like, I want to apologize. I'm like, why? You don't have to. You're the chief lending officer. You're a partner. Why do you have to apologize? Because I do. Because I'm a human being. And
see, that's different,
right?
I mean, that's a different mode of character that I think in your world that probably is pretty rare. And I think people really appreciate. That's the one thing I've really appreciated from you is that you can tell that you are a human being. You actually care about people. You told me a story the other day that you were polling sort of 300 or so messages out there, and you got all the responses. You got like all 300. I said, and I told you that if my boss, he's got like 14 people. If he sent a message to us, he's lucky if he gets one or two back. I mean, and it just shows a difference of not that there's anything wrong with my boss. It's just that the respect that comes out of your character and how people respond to that is very important. But back to what you were just saying around like having to go through like, and you sort of have that self-talk, that Kevin on Kevin, that whether it's Kenny on Kenny or Alex on Alex, like we all have that. Sometimes for me, I don't know how it is for you. Maybe I can even ask you this question is like, for me, I've referred to it as like, it's a nasty neighborhood up here sometimes. Like I have to navigate very carefully at times because I could get lost in my own stuff. And that totally then comes out outwardly in my life and starts to create messes everywhere. And I feel like later on, I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna reel some of that stuff back. Like, let's digest that. It's like food that all of a sudden doesn't sit right. And it's like, oh, I got to deal with that somehow. So I wanted to say that I really appreciate about you and Kenny in the brief conversations that we've had. At times I've noticed that about you as well. You guys wouldn't do this stuff if it didn't matter in that sense.
I mean, the goal is to share what we know, right? And to share and to let people know there's more. I didn't become successful because listen, do I come in like a maniac and work from 6 to 6 every day? And do I do all those things? Sure. But what really, drives me is to watch all these people out here, to watch them get to the next level. I want to see, I'm so excited. I get to go to Nick's wedding on Saturday. And I feel like I played a hand in that by giving him an opportunity here. I've only given him the opportunity. Kenny's embraced him, supported him, and given him the tools he needed to be successful.
Mm.
But it was his character that got him to where he is. When people say, wow, what you did for Nick was so nice, I said, I didn't do anything for Nick. I gave him an opportunity. Nick did for Nick what Nick got. Kevin didn't do anything for Nick. You know, and those are the things I think would separate people is when you do it for the right reason, you do it because you see something in somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and I trust my gut. My gut never steers me wrong. I think those are my biggest wins. That's why I am the proudest. I could go, you know, does the money take care of my family? Sure. But the real joy to me is when I go home at night and I'm having some self-talk of what did today look like. It's never what I did. It's what the surprises that it's supposed to usually, oh my God, I can't believe Kenny pulled that off. Oh my God, I can't believe, you know, the big onion, we call this guy over here, the big onion. The big onion was able to have his best month ever. You know, but those are the things that I get excited for.
Yeah.
You know, where I get dark, where I get really deep into the, you know, the seedy part of my self-talk is, you know, maybe you should have spent a little more time with that conversation. Maybe you should have been a little more patient. But I have to be honest with myself. I accept it, you know, and that's something a lot of people don't do. I'm like, well, he deserved it. He got what he needed. I had to be short with him because he was annoying me. No, I didn't have to do that. I got to hear what that person's feeling. And I think that's something that, you know, we work on it all the time. Slow down, listen to the other person, and hear what they have to say. And maybe it's not about their words. And I talk to Jenna about this all the time. I listen to words more now than ever. So when someone says something and I write it down, I take meticulous notes and I go back and look at it. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. And I call them out and say, hey, that's not what you said. I actually listen. Before I wasn't an active listener. I would do this, a lot of head nodding. And you know those people, right? You're on the webinar and you're like, you know, I look like the wagging dog in the back of the window. Like, what are you doing? There's no way you just said something negative and you're agreeing. Like, listen to the words. And when you talk back to the person, make sure they understand what you're saying and make sure you clarify that I understand what you just said. They feel so much better. That's culture. That's really truly caring about people.
Yeah.
Versus what can you do for me? And I think we've all worked for a leader that said, you know, it was all about what's in it for them. How good do I make them look?
Right.
And I've never wanted to be that guy.
How unmotivating.
100%.
I would imagine in your world, that is some of the least motivating thing. That's like in the creative world, that's like somebody saying, you can do whatever you want. And it's like, wait a second. For a creative, that's the least motivating thing ever. Tell me what I cannot do first. That give me the constraints, because then I know how to build something from within that. But yeah, I would imagine people who you can sort of sniff that out on is that they're doing it for themselves. That is so demoralizing of, well, I'm just going to run through. We call it in our world, it's like, we don't want to just take receipts. We're not at a restaurant where people can come to us and say, okay, because there's a responsibility, especially in the ocean world, in the climate world. There's a most of the funding that like gets those ships out to do that stuff, that gets people out into these research studies and all that other thing all over the world to understand this very important system of life on our planet. That's taxpayer funded most of the time. That comes from our dollars that we put in. And it is a responsibility of the people who receive those funds to give it back to the betterment of society. So I like wear that as a badge in my life to be like, and as soon as you meet somebody who is like, well, this is about me. This is about me doing my science. It's like, when was the last time you checked in on yourself about that?
That's a great one. I got to tell you, you said something there, and Kenny, you'll attest to this. The best gift that EPM got when they got us wasn't from us. It's from a past leader who was so bad that he drove us here, right? So when you talk about how, you know, culture could be destroyed, it's great. I love what I see, and I say it all the time in the show. I love when people put their business card in the back of, you know, here's my culture. We believe in honoring integrity, blah, blah, all the keywords. You know, you come here, you feel it. You see it, you feel it, and we'll call each other out if we don't do it. But am I wrong? Isn't that the best? The best gift for EPM was a bad leader somewhere else.
That's right. It just, you know, forced us out due to, you know, poor leadership. I think it's culture, tag words. You know, we have culture, but there's really no culture behind it. And we sort it out. We wanted to have that good feeling when we come to work every day. And I think that's the biggest change that we've made in our career, right? As individuals, the culture has really driven us to even more success, right? We were successful in past life, But the fact that we have true culture behind us, which pushes us every day. When we come through the door, we bust through that door every morning. It's the culture that lives here that drives us.
Yeah, it's living, it's breathing.
Right.
It's what you said on the boat. So you don't jump on a boat and say, today, let's paint on the side of the boat. We're going to conduct science with integrity, respect one another, blah, blah. No, it's you form it and it just builds and it breathes and it lives and it gets stronger if you have the right people in it, and you get rid of the toxic people if they're not part of that culture.
Right.
Unfortunately, you can't touch them.
Right.
You can't toss them, make them walk the plank like a pirate. I'm sure you'd like to, but
you know, and the fun part about the work that I get to do these days is, so this is all fitting in the world of what's called earth sciences or the geosciences. And that's a huge encompassing umbrella for scientists all over the world. And there's a lot of growing research these days that show there's a problem. There's a problem in the geosciences of not understanding sense of belonging and how people, like, because what I'm hearing from you is that you were able to then get pushed in a direction, as scary as it probably was, to do that and to take that step, but to find your own sense of belonging so that you can then create that for others. That's what culture is about, is that you have a place to belong. And that's why I talk about how, like, I like going places where I don't belong, is because, like, oh, that's where the problems are. I want to go address those problems. And I want to talk about them. And I'm so lucky that I get to live in this world at this time, like today. Like, what is today? August 20 something, like 25th right now. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see if it is.
It's the 24th, 25th, something like
that. But like
August
25th, 2023, right? It's Friday here at this moment. And it's like, it's very interesting to be alive today, to be able to work on these very prolific problems of lack of culture, lack of sense of belonging, in my realm that's in the geosciences, and it's everywhere. People are having a tough time. People are getting out. They're like jumping ship, lack of a better word, to get out of this industry. And that's a problem, because how we understand our planet is by scientists doing their job to understand our planet. And if we have people that are coming from other backgrounds and things like that, coming from other identities that cannot find a sense of belonging in the geosciences, then all of a sudden we're not asking all the questions we could. We're not understanding what we could be understanding. And then we're developing some serious problems, blind spots everywhere. This is an all hands on deck needed approach. And that's a responsibility. So going back to that saying of, like, who is your work for? Check in with yourself. Who is your work for? And from what I'm hearing from you, it's like your work is for your people. And that's hugely important. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. If your work is for your people, to bring them up and to have them have a sense of belonging, that matters. People will go home from this and say, I'm okay. Yeah. I can show up tomorrow.
You just said something I didn't think of, it's been running in my head, you said you took the leap, or you took the chance to leave there because it was very comfortable, right? I was in a really comfortable place.
I would imagine it was terrifying.
And when you push a good person so far, the most comfort I found in my life, and I'm continuing every year to find this to be truer and truer, is out of my comfort zone. Yeah. That's when I become the strongest version of Kevin DeLaurie, is when I'm pushed outside my comfort zone and I'm faced with something that I don't want to do. And I'm not happy to do it, but you know something? I'm going to do it. And when I'm done, I'm going to win. I'm going to be stronger than when I started. And I'm going to be a better leader, better person, better father, better husband.
It's funny you say that. So I had wrote down something that a statement that you had made, Alex, and it said, you gave advice on if someone wanted to get in your industry, what would be your advice? And you said, take pictures and get uncomfortable fast.
Oh, yeah.
So as you just said, it applies to every industry. Yeah. So, why get uncomfortable?
Brilliance is on the fringe. It's not in your comfort zone. When you get outside of your comfort zone and you start to explore where that is, when that mixes with something else, because there's no defined edge anymore. That's where the change is. That's where the brilliance is. Your discomfort. And that's just the experience part of it. This is layered. I go deep with this stuff because it really matters. When you hit the fringes of your comfort zone, all of a sudden you can't look out and be like, I know how this is going to work out because I know where this box starts and ends. No, you have to just mix it up now. You have to figure it out. And that requires you to respond. And that's the beauty of it, is that you have to respond to that situation. But another thing happens when you're uncomfortable as well. And that's where you get to all of a sudden experience something that you may have never done. And if you're afraid of it, I've heard stories of listening to other people's stories before of like somebody, a dear friend of mine, Aria Mason, who is the daughter of Gilbert Mason, who is a civil rights activist, the granddaughter of Gilbert Mason, civil rights activists in the 50s and 60s in Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi. phenomenal story. Her grandfather has the name of a new research vessel that's coming online. It's a big deal. We had listened to a story of hers, and she mentioned about if fear is not something that is part of where you're going, if you are not afraid of where you are going, you are probably not doing something that is aligned with your purpose. So that's part of that uncomfortability is like, yes, go where the brilliance is, go on the fringes, because it's not going to be in your comfort zone. That's where you've already figured it out.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And if you're afraid of it, then keep what's just beyond it. What happens if you started to move through that fear a little bit? I talk to students a lot, and this is what I talk to them is like, they come knowing how to do stuff. They know how to take pretty pictures. They know how to like use equipment. You have lovely equipment in this space here in the studio. Like they would come in here and be like, yeah, like what I was doing is like, I know how to mess with this and stuff, but I challenge them and I say, okay, what if this stuff wasn't here? How do you then do your job? How do you then actually approach what you can and cannot do and tell a good story? And that's super, super important that when you strip down all of this stuff, what's left? And if you're not moving in your uncomfortable zones, if you're not moving on the fringes of where you can operate, if you're not a little bit afraid of that, then you're probably just like, you're comfy. Maybe you're stuck. Maybe you're stuck. And that, to me, that's never been okay. I get very uncomfortable when I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But-
I love it.
I usually say that my greatest wins have always come off my biggest fears. My
Yeah.
greatest advances in my life as a person, more so as a person, because I've evolved a lot. So if you talk to someone that knew me when I was 25, they're like, well, that guy's crazy. Yeah, but that's when I was.
I would love to know you when you're 25.
Oh no, I was all about
That would be
one guy.
Because he's still crazy today.
The culture only,
Yeah, it would just be amped up.
the culture only existed of one person, me.
Yeah.
So the and as I grew up and become more aware, my biggest wins were always on when I didn't know what was next, when I was afraid of what was next, but still took the next step. I've never been afraid to take the next step, and when I do that, it always comes out for the betterment of me. Because no matter adversity, I've been saying over and over, it's nothing but a speed bump. You look
Yeah.
at it as a brick wall, and that's what it is.
That's confidence.
100%. I mean, it just.
It's not a real leap of faith, right? Because confidence behind it. So
Like this move to be here wasn't it was a lot of anxiety, a lot of things, and just like, and then it happened, and everyone's blowing me up. Where do we go? I want to be with you. Like these are the things that get you to the next level. But it didn't come without that fear. It didn't come without the not knowing what's next. What if? I did it with all those questions in my head. I just conquered something the other day. I'm not a big hugger, I realized, and I leaned into it the other day, and someone said, "Man, yeah, I'd never give you a hug." It was a woman, obviously, and I said, "All right, go ahead, give me a hug." She said, "Well, you're really good at hugging." I'm like, "Well, I didn't know that."
it's one of these where you just push.
Yes, it makes me very uncomfortable.
Sticks out.
Yeah, I'm not a hugger,
Just a little
but I went out of my comfort
With
zone.
practice.
I'm getting there. I could be a real good hugger someday. But this.
Not interested.
No. Thank you, buddy. There you go. See, I think, this has been, we're going to have Alex on
Absolutely.
several more times. Just want to let you guys know, this 30
I
minutes
don't know
could
how
go
your
on.
audience would feel about that.
Oh, no. This is more so about Kenny and I. We love talking about culture with real people. We haven't even scratched, I can tell you this right now. We haven't scratched the surface of Alex DeCiccio. There's so much more to this guy. I can't wait to share more episodes with Alex
Absolutely.
and Kenny. And, as always, guys, thanks for joining us. We're not going to ask a stable question because that's probably
To be continued.
Yeah, 3 or 4 episodes away. But as always, everyone, Alex, thanks for joining us. We're going to have you back very soon.
Thank you.
Kenny,
been
another
an
great
honor.
episode. We haven't even scratched the surface. I know you got stories, buddy, and I can't wait to share them with everyone.
That's cool.
Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Host Perspective. As always, we look forward to seeing you soon. Bingo bango.